Welcome to Grab Lives, everyone. And just to start off with our disclaimer, everything we say and do does not reflect the City of Los Angeles Fire Department. Starting off with our sponsor, Frontline Behavioral Wellness. Frontline's impact on first responders and firefighters, police officers, veterans. This agency has a design program for these people who serve our communities and are putting themselves out there and need help. So they have a team of clinicians and facilities that are set in place to treat addiction, any issues around depression and anxiety, with group therapy and different innovative measures of which they are using this way to treat people in a special way who desire and require special care. So if you know anyone who is involved as a first responder or who needs help, who is a spouse of a first responder who needs help, this place provides means of assistance in so many different ways. So go ahead and reach out to them. You can go to sarahealth.com and reach out to their sister company that's in Costa Mesa. And they provide their own service that's out there. But they have a special hotline that you can call that's 24/7 confidential, that's just for first responders. So if you know someone who's in crisis, who needs help, or who is not in crisis, who needs maybe a little bit of assistance, but this hotline is designed for that. It's 661-877-7241. Now today's episode is going to be with a marriage and family therapist, Maggie Hernandez, who is a spouse of a firefighter who works for Pasadena Fire Department. She's an amazing human being who has a heart for first responders and works with the cultural competency of what firefighters have to deal with. And so she relates on so many different levels from her own personal experience of what she has to face at home and what she treats and her different modalities with EMDR. She goes a bit more into what EMDR is, what trauma is, what somatic work is. It was an amazing episode on understanding the complexity of what we're facing. And what we're doing here is we're building a team as far as like what Grab Lives offers. And we're providing this method of how do we face this epidemic, this crisis of what we're dealing with right now with this mental health issue with first responders, and particularly with firefighters. And we're dealing with so many different things, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. What's the answer here? It takes a community. It takes an effort from everyone, and you, yourself, individually. It's not just one word answer. It's not one person that's going to do it. It's everyone together. So I loved this episode. It was a great topic to talk about and see what work Maggie's doing. But it was a great conversation, so I hope you enjoy this. And remember that this is going to be an effort on everyone and everyone's part, and to show up for yourself. So thank you for listening, and stay tuned. All right, everyone. Welcome to Grab Lives. And today we have a special guest, Maggie Hernandez, who is a registered associate MFT, marriage family therapist, who does a ton of different work and also does a lot of things in reference to mental health. Her husband is a firefighter paramedic at Pasadena Fire Department. And one of the things, Grab Lives is set up and designed to do is to bring the community together, because we're in a state of crisis right now with everything going on. And I hope everyone understands the complexity of what's happening within our members that are serving our communities, serving humanity. And we all need to come together in an effort to bring this this idea that we are in this state of crisis, and we're doing it together. And it takes an effort individually and as a whole to set up this paradigm shift with learning and understanding what the complexity is and how to treat it and how to go about it. it's not easy. It's actually really difficult once each person individually goes into their own heart of self and what's blocking them from their truth and their ability to step into the power of who they are. And it takes that effort and the complexity of that to do it. So thank you so much, Maggie, for coming today. And if you don't mind giving an intro of yourself, all the things you do, and we'll get started.
Yeah. So, hey, I'm Maggie Hernandez. I'm a registered associate marriage and family therapist, which means I'm doing all of the work as a therapist. I'm just working under a licensed psychologist currently. While I rack up my 3,000 hours for licensure, I'm hoping to be done with those by the end of the year. So maybe, hopefully, I'll be fully licensed by December. So I've been doing this work for a couple of years now. And when I started, I was working with recovery. So I worked at a residential treatment facility in Santa Barbara, working with women who had co-occurring disorders, so a mental disorder and substance use. So left there and ended up going to a clinic in Oxnard where I was working with strictly domestic violence survivors and sexual assault survivors. And after that, went to the private practice where I've been working with first responders and trauma survivors exclusively. So I like the dark shit. It's kind of why I got into this. I never wanted to just work with anxiety and depression. Granted, those are very real for the people who are experiencing them. I'm just not the right therapist for that. I would rather sit with someone when they're going through some of their darkest times and just witness that and be able to be a compassionate witness. I'm a true empath. So being able to just sit with someone while they're going through some of those things is one of my favorite things.
No, I think people avoid themselves for such a long time, and then they get to the point of having to face their darkness all at once.
Yeah.
And that's a common theme of what happens. We wait and we just ignore. There's something called hiding and avoiding. And it's a common behavioral pattern of which we don't want to face ourselves and we don't want to learn about ourselves. And it's especially for our line of work, first responders, police officers, and firefighters, we don't want to do this nitty gritty, shadow work as they call it, and it's a avoidance to a point where unless you're desperate, then you want help. And it takes a lot, especially for a therapist like yourself, to tackle all that all at once. There's so much going on, and it takes a longer time to kind of assess the situation and find that person to go into a neutrality point with themselves. And I think with everything in Western society, we lose this idea of studying the self. And you go into any other culture outside of Western society, that's all they do is they study themselves. I think we spend a lot of time and focus on studying everything outside of ourselves when we've lost touch with the study of who we are, our minds, our thoughts, our patterns, our biological systems. And it's important to know yourself,
It's so interesting you say that too, because we are not a collectivist society. So right. To spend so much time looking outward when we are not a collectivist society, I just think it's such an interesting kind of thing to look at when you're looking at other cultures who are collectivist. They spend so much time studying the self, and how it fits into the overall picture. But and you made a good point when you said, we don't like to examine ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't. And I think by and large, I usually hear from people when they are in crisis because, there's so many therapy sayings that if you resist, it persists. And that's true. And these things show up really at inconvenient times. They don't show up when, you're going to be, on vacation for 3 weeks and then, oh no, now let me go ahead and tackle this trauma or, these dark things in my past. It's okay. Well, I recognize that I'm drinking a fifth of whiskey every night when I come home, or I recognize that, I'm starting to become abusive, or I recognize that, there's some kind of problematic behavior. And that's when people usually reach out. And I'm glad they reach out. I don't care when you show up to the party. You can come here late. Just get here. Yeah, I'm good with whenever. But yeah, crisis is usually when I'm hearing from people.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I went through my own issues, where it smacked me in the face hard.
Yeah.
And luckily I made a choice to change. And if it had not been, from my own personal circumstances to face myself, I had to make that choice. And it comes down to that. It comes down to the power of choice and the willingness to make a decision. Hey, you can choose two roads here. Choose the road to face yourself and to look at yourself with compassion, and that spirit within you, it's been calling your name for quite some time. And if you're willing to go there, open that door, you realize, like, underneath the covers, of everything you've thought to be dirty laundry or whatever it is in your life and your consciousness, it's not dirty. If you clean it up a little bit and do it piece by piece and have a lot of patience with it, a lot of times there's a gift lying underneath it.
Oh, every time. And
it's showing you something. There's a point of creativity with what's being created there, and to be an alchemist of that part of who you are. You can change and be a masterful person at that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. An alchemist. Yeah. And it's so much of my job is saying, okay, yeah, you can go down either path. You've been going down the one that the one of individual. It's like, I'm going to sort it out. I'm going to figure it out. I don't need anyone's help. Fuck everybody. Or you can sit with it and you can try this other path. Bonus, I'm going to be there with you every step of the way. You don't have to do this alone. I understand. I understand trauma. I've worked through a lot of my own trauma. I've sat with countless people as they go through trauma. And it's a gift to get to do what I do. Like, just the fact that I get to sit with someone. I tell my husband all the time, he'll tell me, oh, this is the best job in the world, being a firefighter. I'm like, I'm going to argue with you on that. I get to sit with someone and see post-traumatic growth, and I get to see them have these amazing realizations about themselves. That, my friend, that makes it the best job in the world.
Yeah, we're taught that it's the best job in the world. And they market that for everyone. I think things have changed for a lot of people with the call volume that's been heavily increased and the population increase. It's causing things to really shift, where a lot of members are saying 20 years and out, where they're done at 20 years because it's so grueling. I
can't blame them because, I think when these last storms came through, my husband got recalled for, I don't remember what the actual terminology is, but he was basically going to be going around on like this giant pumping truck to pump out someone's basement if it flooded. Mm-hmm. That was their job. And I remember looking at him going, but you have specialized training. That's like sending a surgeon out to do trash work, like to go and pick up trash. Like, that's fine. Both jobs are valuable, right? Like, they're both important. But I was like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing something like that? And he said, well, because I have to be a plumber. I have to be a fix-it kind of person. I have to be a handyman. I have to be able to, help defuse a situation sometimes. Like, I have to be a social worker. I have to do all of these things. And I was like, yeah, there's no wonder people are burning out the way that they are.
Yeah, it's not so glamorous as people think, driving in a big red truck and putting out fires and cutting a hole on top of a building that's on fire. Okay, that's great and all, but a lot of the times that glamour is not what we do. We are a jack of all trades and have to be a master at all of them. Yeah. It's very interesting to see like all the stuff we do. And I tell the things that the calls I'm going on to my girlfriend, like, she's like, what, why exactly? Why are you, siphoning out water out of a person's basement? Yeah. It's when people are in a state of like, I need help, I need shit to get done. We're the ones that show up.
They call you. Yeah.
And we have to figure it out and be able to do it quickly. And there's been many circumstances where I'm on a call and everyone's scratching their heads like, I've never seen this shit before, but it is not glamorous sometimes. And a lot of it is understanding the I guess humility and the bravery we do and getting our hands dirty and the things we don't want to do. And the common theme is just to do the job. Mm-hmm. and do it with a state of gratitude, and not fight against it. When we have these calls that we had go on, that's like, what the fuck are we doing here?
What are we doing here? Yeah.
So one of the things here we were talking about before we even started this episode was the work you do in somatic work and trauma in relation to that. And I'd love to dive into what that is, if you don't mind explaining.
Sure.
To people. First of all, what is trauma? And then how does it affect our minds, our bodies, and its complexity? Because this is a serious topic that people are barely scratching the surface on, trying to understand what is happening to humanity right now, really. And then the people like us who are working in this field, we're dealing with one of the things is hypervigilance. Why is that happening? People are dealing with nightmares, poor sleep, biological disorders, low testosterone and estrogen issues.
Yeah.
So there's a serious thing that's occurring right now. And as a clinician like yourself, you're diving into this work, which is very complex to tackle this entirety of the whole here. So love for you to dive into that and explain.
Yeah. Excuse me. So somatic work, soma means the body. So I'm really focused on what comes up in your body, what shows up in your body when we are discussing these traumatic events. So I tend to fall in the school of belief, like Gabor Mate's take that trauma is what happens in your body.
I love that guy.
Oh man, he's just, what a blessing that man is. Yeah. Shaped a lot of my views around, or reshaped a lot of my views around addiction. When I was going into work in addiction, I was terrified going into that because I was, I come from my mother is an alcoholic and in varying stages of recovery, depending on when you talk to her, but her whole family dealt with alcoholism. So I really wanted to push against that. But yeah, learning about his take on addiction and connection and all of that was pretty formative for me. But yeah, his view that traumatic experiences are the experience, but trauma is what occurs in your body when you survive a traumatic experience. So, that can look like flashbacks. It can look like muscle tension. It can look like fibromyalgia. It can look like IBS. It can look like hormonal imbalances. It can look like a lot of different things. So what I do, my work is, while we could talk about the situation and we can talk about the events and we can talk about what you think about those events, changing your thinking about the event itself or about events, whatever it might be, doesn't necessarily get to the root of the problem. You can change your thinking around anything,
right?
But it doesn't change the thing itself.
Right.
So I'm more about, that's great, we can change your thinking, but I want to get in there to finding out what happens in your body when we're talking about this stuff. What emotions come up for you? Does that emotion have a color? Does that emotion have energy? Is it moving? What does it look like? Does it talk to you? If it had a voice, what could it say? If it looked like a person, what would it look like? And it sounds kind of hippy dippy, and I will tell every single firefighter I work with.
I don't.
I say it's going to sound hippy dippy, but stay with me on this. There's value to it. And invariably, everyone follows me, which, I'm grateful for their trust in saying, like, yeah, it's going to sound a little bit out there. This is not what you're used to hearing. But, not fuck your thoughts, but like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know neck up what's going on. This shit lies to you every day, all the time. Your body never lies to you. Never. Have you ever been in a situation where everything in your body is saying, no, no, don't do this, but you do it anyway because you think, oh, it's going to be fine. We do it all the time. And vice versa. Our body is saying, yeah, totally, this is great. This is going to be amazing. And your brain is like, nope, no, this is not going to be a good situation for me. We don't listen to our bodies enough, I think. So a lot of my work is just based around, let me reconnect you to your body. Let me get you connected with what comes up for you when you're going through these things. Let's get you connected to that intuition that's in there that we don't listen to so much, and then let's follow that. And again, the thoughts are important. CBT, CPT are great approaches. They help people. I'm not going to knock those at all. I think they're wonderful. They're just not for me. I would rather, do some EMDR and actually get to the root of what's going on. There's a reason why this particular call affected you the way that it did. Let's figure out why. Is it connected to something that happened when you were 5 years old?
Usually it is.
Usually it is. Yeah. When I hear the float backs from my clients in EMDR, we're going back to stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with that PEDS call.
For sure.
That you went on 2 weeks ago. It has everything to do with something that you went through when you were 7. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting. So yeah, could I change someone's thinking around that PEDS call 2 weeks ago? Yes. Is that going to fix all of those manifestations of the trauma that you sustained at 7? No, it's not. So I'd rather fix the problem itself.
I love that. And I think it's one important thing to go back to when a firefighter says that's hippy dippy. That becomes...
Yeah, tell me about that. Why do you...
Well, because it's a common word that's thrown out in our service.
Oh, I agree. And I say it just because it's like, I know they're going to recognize this, but I am hippy dippy, so...
Yeah, let's that first of all, that's a state of resistance to seeing the complexity of what we do. If you look at a hippie, do you see hippies usually like a true hippie? Do you ever see them with anxiety and depression and stuff in their faces with SSRIs? The answer is no.
Yeah.
So, do you ever see a hippie committing suicide? The answer is really no. A true hippie, not a pseudo hippie, right?
No.
But it's annoying to me to see when a rigid person is not open. This means that they're not open and are willing to accept what's here to really help. And in this state of rigidity, this is one of the issues with firefighters and first responders that we're facing, is that rigidity creates walls that are built up to protect yourself, because something's new coming in. In order for something new to come in, you have to release something. Because now if you release something, there's a void space there. So that you have to bring something in, and that new thing that's coming in is going to really shift you and change you for the better. A lot of times we don't want to change the old habits, the old behaviors, the old ideas of who we thought we were or are.
Because we think it's worked so well.
Right. So, that's one part that's really... we're shifting out of that, and we have to demystify meditation. We have to demystify yoga and yogic practices.
Yeah.
And to understand yoga, really too, like yoga is it is a place of understanding of your consciousness. Really, it's an art of living. It's not necessarily the stretches. That is one version of yoga.
Sure.
So you're bringing these ideas to the surface. Like, we barely understand it because it's been westernized or bastardized by us, America, to market it and bring capitalism into it. But we've lost touch with the roots of what is everything that's supporting the intelligence of who we are as humans. And that's what you're talking about, is like, we're hyper intelligent beings, and our bodies are attuned to that. And for us, we're coming into a state of burnout. So when you're in a state of burnout, you've lost the capacity to touch those parts of yourself and be in tune to the intelligence of who you are, until you have some serious chronic issues.
Well, I think part of it too, in the fire service anyway, is you are taught to not listen to your body. Because if you listen to your body, you're a liability on the fire grounds. There's no two ways about it. You don't listen to your body. Fuck your feelings. You need to follow what your head's telling you. You need to follow what your training is telling you. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I need my folks to be able to basically code switch between the two. When you're not on shift, how are you decompressing? How are you coming off shift? I like to have all of my clients have a ritual that they do when they come off shift. Whether it is taking a shower once your relief comes in so that you can actually take a shower and not have to worry about the tones going off. Or if it's washing your hands and taking the time to scrub the backs of your hands and under your nails to and visualize yourself washing that place off washing those calls off, washing everything that comes with the job off so that you can then get into your car. Maybe when you get into your car, you're doing some breathing exercises. You know, on your way home, maybe you're listening to some binaural audio, whatever it is. You need to be able to code switch, because when you get home, you can't still be occupying that space that you were when you're on shift, because your life demands something different of you. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful the way you're setting that up, because, we're set up to be a good soldier, to show up and be that robot, but we're not robots.
Yeah.
We're more complex than that.
Yeah.
Even though we're designed to be like these biological computers, you have the capacity to change and switch that on and off switch. And part of that is like coming home, right? And not bringing that good soldier home. No one wants a good soldier coming home and telling everyone you got to do the dishes. Now, I always joke around in my home saying, hey, I'm going to start running this place like a drill tower. My girlfriend says, well, I'm going to be gone by the time you start that up.
I was going to say, how does that go over?
But it's funny to mess around like that, because no one wants that. No one wants a drill sergeant at home.
No. And
because it creates disharmony around children, especially, you don't want to create fear into your children in a state of they're afraid that you're walking around because you just got off work and now you're home. That's not a good state of mind. It's a good state of being to create a safe environment for your children, for your spouse, however that turns up for you. And the people who have been divorced 4 times, that's probably how they treat themselves and how they treat their environment they live at.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to be around that bullshit. I don't.
No, we joke at home. My husband and I will joke around. He's like, this is your station. He's like, you're the captain here. He's like, nice. He'll tell everyone it's a 51-49 partnership that we've got here. And Maggie's got the 51. You should not have to occupy that same brain space at home as you do on shift. And 9 times out of 10, that's what I'm hearing from my folks is when they're going home, I'm like, all right, the first session is a lot of all right, tell me what's coming up for you today. Second session is then history taking. And then it's, all right, tell me what your life is like between work and home. What is it like when you come home? What does it look like? How are you acting when you come home? If I were to talk to your partner, what would they say? If I were to talk to your kids, what would they say? So it's interesting. I get a lot of visibility into kind of how they're able to switch off if they are. And we do a lot of work around that.
So in the market of looking at the body as face value, right? And understanding, how we entrap, stored emotions and thought patterns into our emotions at a cellular level, we carry this memory through our body. And that's the type of work you're stepping into as far as somatic work, which is essential to really finding good therapy and finding an outcome that's very rapid to coming to find someone into a neutral place with themselves. So I love how you're explaining how the mind is it's this liar. I saw this shirt the other day walking at the store. It said things, your anxiety is lying to you.
I love that.
Or a scene like that. Yeah. Anxiety is the greatest conspiracy theorist.
Nice.
You gotta realize you are in control of your thoughts and create this empowerment of yourself to step into the driver's seat and make an effort to start saying affirmations for yourself. You're in dominion over your mind and you're a creator being. You create your reality. These are things that you are able to use in an effort to start a focal point for yourself, to start creating for yourself how you want to create your life, your thought patterns. And don't allow certain things to come through. So that's for myself. That's how I started to step into my own power. Is I started making these affirmations and these intentions. And I made an effort with journaling and my practices with them. That's when I started to see some change. But an effort with the somatic work that I had to deal with, I had so many different things in my body that I had to shed off. And that took a long time. And I'm still dealing with some stuff in my physical body that I carry from deep, deep wounds. And instead of, when I started doing different somatic things with myself, I was fearful at first, and avoidant to go into it. And now I made a choice and not allowing myself to be in fear or in a state of avoidance. I go into it and see what it's teaching me.
That's scary though.
For sure.
It's really scary. Yeah. And I think what I see more often than not is people just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Because they weren't taught. And I wasn't taught this either. I've had to learn over years, trial and error, and just trying to do everything I can to figure out, like, how do I sit with these things? Because sitting with that discomfort, we talked about this a little earlier, sitting with that discomfort and sitting with that pain is really hard. It's really hard. And our bodies and our brains will do anything to get us out of it. We will do anything to get comfortable. If we go with an internal family systems lens, which my clients all recognize this when I talk to them about it. Everyone has parts. We all have a manager part. We all have a firefighter part. We all have an exile part. And then we have our core self. So like these other parts, the exile is like our wounded child. Most often than not, our wounded child. We've got the manager part who's like the preemptive protector. They come in with perfectionism, people pleasing, all of that stuff. We have the firefighter part, which I always tell people, like, it wasn't named for you guys, don't worry. But they're the reactive protector. That's where substance use comes from, alcohol use, over medicating, overworking, that kind of stuff. And then you have your core self, who is usually the really quiet one. But that core self is compassionate and capable and calm and willing and able to take care of all of these parts. It just takes a lot of being able to sit with each part and ask, what are you trying to do for me? Like, you have to actually engage these parts and ask them, what's the point of you being here? What are you trying to do for me right now? But yeah, my work involves a lot of teaching someone, how do you sit with that discomfort? I sit with them through it. And I think being able to teach someone, I'm going to be here with you while you're looking at this traumatic experience. Like, if we could take your trauma and put it into a snapshot, a lot of EMDR we do, there's a picture that represents the worst part of an experience to you. And so I'll tell them, okay, can you look at that picture when I'm with you? I just want you to look at it. Okay, now step out of that. We're going to pendulate a little bit. Then I'm going to have you step a little bit closer to that picture while I'm with you. Can you just maybe take a couple of steps? Okay, maybe can you pick up that picture and look at it? Okay, put it back down. We're going to step back out of it. We do a lot of state change just to kind of test how capable are they of being able to sit with that trauma, because I don't want to just have someone jump in the deep end. As willing as some of my clients are, a lot of them are, fuck it, let's go. I want to fix this stuff. I want to heal. I want to get better. I still have to do this responsibly. Like, hang on, I can't have you like dissociate because I had you jump into it too fast. So we test that a lot. And then even when we're in like desensitization and EMDR, I'm reminding them the entire time, you are not alone. I'm right here with you. We're going to look at these pictures and you're going to be okay. I'm right here with you. So it's a lot of that.
I love how you're categorizing the different aspects of the self, because it's really powerful. And I know, for myself, I didn't understand that until I started to do certain practices, meditation prompts, where I would sit at a table with different parts of myself, different ages of myself.
Yes.
And it was interesting when I did that, because I would have different parts of myself speak to me about what was being unheard, what was being left behind and not processed.
Yeah.
And it was really powerful when I did that. I began to really see that there are these pieces of me that wanted to be whole again by being integrated and being brought forth into my consciousness and my awareness. And that was really beautiful. And I think when I met my inner child through that experience, that part of me was so precious and it was so beautiful. And I remember just like being in tears when I came across that part of me, because that part of me is super sensitive and required much more of softness with myself instead of being like this masculine protector, firefighter part of me. And it needed more of this compassionate, creative self of me that wanted more play And I know that now. I know when I'm in a state of play, that's my inner child that's being integrated, that needs that piece of me to come out. And I know, like, you know, through my studies now, I study all indigenous practices across this planet. And a lot of them are really powerful in the way they see the human consciousness, that way they see the human self. And there's this Tibetan practice where they actually will create their own archetype of who they are with all the pieces of themselves. Mm-hmm. And they put this direct focus on that. It's almost like this like Transformer Power Ranger thing where everyone puts their power together and create this like beast, right?
Yes.
And, you know, that's a really powerful thing to do. And if we understand how our thoughts create reality and how we are the creators of that, it's really cool to use these things and play with it, have a bit more curiosity as opposed to refraining and thinking, oh, this is outside of my belief system.
Just the judgment.
It's a lot of judgment.
Yeah, a lot of judgment.
What's interesting about judgment is that when you judge something, you fear it.
Yeah.
And when you fear something, you create more fear.
And I think it's important to understand too, though, that part of that is a survival thing. Like, we're so slow to evolve. Judgment means survival. So, I mean, being able to call that out and say, like, I'm hearing a lot of judgment right now. I'm not hearing enough curiosity. I'm hearing judgment, and I get it. I understand where the judgment comes from. Part of it is also like just your job. You are a professional problem solver. And if people don't make a decision, they don't make a judgment, people die. So it's saying that, like, okay, well, in here, that's not the case. In this room, that's not the case. So hang on before you start judging. Let's start being curious about this first. But yeah, judgment it's a survival thing.
I love that. But it's sad because judgment also, it will keep you from, you know, coming into a state of unconditional love.
Yeah. And growth.
Which is sad because, you know, if I say the word love on here and unconditional love, guys are like, come on, man, you're talking about love. But no, unconditional love is a frequency of which it operates.
Yes.
Okay. It's about giving and receiving. And it's important for your own growth and your own expansion to understand this frequency of unconditional love, which has been taught by, you know, mystics and teachers across the eons of humanity. Yeah. So, like, we have to instill, like, why are these teachers teaching the same thing over and over and over? We're still not getting it. Okay, well, judgment is something you are keeping and refraining from yourself, restricting that flow of this frequency to follow through. And I know if I'm working with a paramedic, right, that's the field of my work. And I know one who's operating in that state, who has got some serious compassion and great bedside manner, versus one who's burnt out and is not.
Yeah.
And I don't want to work with a person who's burnt out, because by the end of my shift, I feel burnt out.
You're going to feel burnt out.
And I just can't stand that. It's
contagious.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, going back to the categorization of what you're talking about, you know, that I just, I would say, if anyone's listening, you know, try that prompt with yourself to go into the parts of yourself to integrate what comes up. You'll be amazed of what comes forth by 5 minutes saying, hey, I'm going to sit at a table and try to visualize parts of me and see what comes up.
Yeah. Because
it's really powerful in this state of awareness, really, what comes forward. And I'm sure if you're doing something like EMDR, that's even more powerful when you're having the brain being reprocessed, you know. But I'd love for you to explain a little bit more about EMDR.
Sure.
Because we haven't really dived into much of what EMDR is and how effective it's been, because I know a lot of people have done it and it has been effective for them in so many different ways.
Yeah. So it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Just personal anecdote for me, it has been transformative going through and just like reprocessing reprocessing the traumatic events that I myself have survived, and, you know, seeing the effect my husband has done EMDR. He was burned on a fire in 2020 and pretty seriously burned. I mean, it was a flashover. It could have been a hell of a lot worse than it was. Thank goodness it wasn't. But he would have flashbacks all the time. Meanwhile, me as a therapist missed every sign that he had PTSD, every single sign. But yeah, he went through EMDR, and I think after his first session was kind of rough, but after his second session, he said, I can actually talk about it and think about it, and it's not putting me right back there. So anyway, back to what it is. It's an 8-stage treatment protocol for trauma. It's probably one of the most effective things for PTSD. What it involves is going through, you do some background work, you do the state change stuff like the pendulating, what we were just talking about. Then you move into desensitization after some of the background stages. And desensitization involves using bilateral stimulation to keep the brain basically lit up so that your amygdala, like the lizard brain, can't kick on. So you can use tapping, like butterfly tapping, where you're kind of tapping your shoulders. I prefer using eye movement, where you're just going to watch my fingers for about 30 to 45 seconds. So you do a round, and then I always tell my people, I'm so boring during EMDR. It's going to be a lot of the same thing. You are going to hear me say the exact same thing over and over. You're doing unpredictable stuff right now. I'm going to be predictable. So after we finish a round, I'm going to tell you to pause. We're going to take a deep breath in. We're going to let it go. We're going to do it together. And then I'm going to ask you, what are you noticing? Then I just want to hear, what pictures showed up for you? What emotions are you feeling right now? What sensations come up for you? A lot of the time I'm hearing like, I'm nauseous. And it's, here's the trash can. Do you want to keep going? And so you just do that. And basically what you're doing is you're processing the trauma that you went through, or the trauma responses that are coming up for you. And you're processing the events that happened in a way that you were never able to process them before. Because what happens when you go through any traumatic event is it stores itself in fragments. And we can't necessarily put logic to those fragments. We can't put them back together logically, because traumatic events don't make any fucking sense. So when that happens, we can't put it back together because we're so left brain as adults. When our left brain can't figure out what to do with it, everything kind of disconnects in your brain. Like, this is the hand brain model. Sorry, go to this. Everything disconnects and your lizard brain kicks on, and you go into that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, faint. You go into one of those. Like, that's when you're going to have these really uncharacteristic behaviors coming out of people. So the whole idea of EMDR is to keep the brain lit up through bilateral stimulation so that you can then fully process this event, fully process the feelings around the event, the emotions, all the things that come up. Then, because there's a negative belief about yourself around that event, we then do, I guess, like an installation. It's called installation of a positive belief about yourself, something you would rather believe about yourself instead around that event. So then we do the installation phase, and that's where I get to be a cheerleader. I love that place. That's when I'm like, feel this in every part of your body. I want you to feel this positive belief. Like, how big can you make this? I want it to explode out of this room. And then you do a body scan just to see if there's any residual tension. And then that's kind of it. That after you get through the body scan, you've finished one step on your trauma map, because you do a trauma mapping of all of these events that you've gone through. Yeah. And so that's kind of in a nutshell what EMDR is, but it's magic. It transforms an event into something that happened to you instead of something that's happening to you right now.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I thought I heard the story about the woman who created EMDR, and she noticed when, like, she went through a traumatic situation, her eyes were moving rapidly.
Francine Shapiro, she said she would walk out in the park and that she would notice that her eyes were moving from side to side, and that she was able to actually process things differently. So that's kind of how it came up. But yeah, there's tons of forms of bilateral stimulation. I teach them just as like coping skills anyway. I'll teach people, if you're going through something where, you're coming back from a call, and say you're in the rescue and you're coming back from a call that was really rough, you can do bilateral stimulation in the rig on your way back. Just do this. Just tap your fingers. And it's something that kind of helps keep you in your body, because you really want to leave the building sometimes, right? So it's that, or crossing your hands over on your legs and tapping alternate sides of your legs. And these are small things. You don't have to be doing eye movement, because people are going to look at you funny sometimes if you're doing that on shift. So it's there's some inconspicuous ways of doing it that I teach to people all the time.
I love that. I mean, so a lot with this too, you're using these methods to integrate like the left and right hemisphere of the brain. And that's what EMDR essentially is doing. You're reprocessing things by using both hemispheres. And so you have, your logical, your left hemisphere is your logical side, and then your right hemisphere is going to be more of the subconscious creative side. And to move between those fields is essential into bringing like homeostasis, because now that amygdala part of your brain cannot operate as freely.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be able to, you're essentially like being a masterful self with being able to use this biohacking of using that method. I know like Marines, they will actually use this method of going from left to right with their eyes whenever they're tracking something.
Yep.
And knowing that the left side going first and going to the right actually will track easier than going from right to left. Now, and then you have these other methods of what you're doing by using your finger tapping has been used in ancient yogic practices by using these mudras,
yep,
which activate certain left and right hemispheres of the brain as well. So like these practices, they're not hippy dippy.
And none of them
scientific.
and none of them are new concepts either. This
Exactly.
is what I love. None
right.
of these things are new concepts. Did
Right.
someone package them into an approach? Yes,
Right.
but they're not all brand new concepts.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, I study with a Qigong Kung Fu master, and he teaches me to do the same thing with my left and right hemispheres of the brain. And actually will increase, if you do like left and eye, like tracking like that, it actually will increase your ability to see, and will activate that ability. You won't have to wear glasses, or you prevent yourself from wearing glasses. I mean, the guy's like in his 70s, and he always tells me, he's like, Jonathan, it's like, I don't wear glasses. I do this all the time. You should do it.
Oh, maybe I should try
and
that.
So, he teaches me different practices about the body energetically.
Yeah.
Teaches things about my life force energy, this channel within my system. And it's really taught me to understand my body more.
Yeah.
And when I first went to him, he was telling me that I move my joints really aggressively. He was telling me how everything I'm doing, I have to unlearn, because the art of the subtle movements is actually key to having a greater life without pain. And he keeps everything simple. That's like his teaching, is keep it simple, because the more you are going to overanalyze things, now you're creating a world of anxiety for yourself.
Yeah.
So it's like, I really had to come back to the foundation of how the human body is designed to operate. And it's really teaching me humility and my own rigidity and resistance to stop that. Because he says like, well, no resistance, no stress.
Yeah.
So like I've been really leaning into, this older gentleman who's teaching me how to go back to the basics, really.
Yeah. So much of it is just, we need to get out of our own way.
Yeah. And a lot of it is like ancient, technologies that's been used for thousands of years. I mean, Qigong or Tai Chi, which is like been used for over 5,000 years in ancient Chinese medicine. Aside from that, it's just interesting the complexity of what EMDR is doing. And I know the big thing and push right now that's being provided is like psychedelic therapy.
Yeah.
So you have like MDMA that's been pretty proficient at treating things. And MDMA, in a process of going through traumatic incident, the eyes will move back and forth. Yep. You see the commonality here.
Yeah.
And the help that these things are providing. So like, I know I had witnessed this gentleman who wrote this book on MDMA, and he's a doctor, Dr. Dan Engel, and he was talking about this woman who went through this serious traumatic sexual assault by the age of 6. And she went through this huge MDMA therapy where her eyes started moving back and forth. And she reprocessed something she said she would never have done had she had not gone and done this MDMA therapy.
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful. And the way he described it, everyone was crying in the room, because this woman was able to process something that was so deeply rooted. But the eye movement, he said, was one of the most important factors, that she was able to reprocess it in such a way to like, it was a reprogramming of her mental structure of the incident.
Yeah.
Really powerful stuff.
It is. And I think, part of it, so the eye movement stuff is so important for us to be able to process. So is just like regular like body movement, just the somatic movement. There's a whole, so somatic experiencing is another just intervention or a whole other school of thought. And the idea behind it is that, our body is same kind of thing as EMDR. Our body is storing all of these things. And that by basically completing a stress cycle, that kind of helps to free up that movement in our body. And we're able to then process and release some of this stuff that we've been holding on to for 20, 30 years. I talk a lot with my folks about how are you completing a stress cycle? And some of it, the first question is always, do you know what the stress cycle is? And then there's some psychoeducation, but then it's...
Yeah, what is the stress cycle?
So the stress cycle is, if you look at like a dog is probably my number one example, usually, because it's the most accessible. You come home for being like, you went to the grocery store, right? You were gone for an hour. You come home, that dog is like, oh my God, you've been gone for months. I'm so excited to see you. And like, they're just so happy. They're just jazzed, right? They're spinning around in circles. If it's my dog, she's just a total freak. And then they take a pause and they shake their bodies off. They're completing a stress cycle. They're shaking off basically that like anxiety and excitement. We're the only creatures who don't do that. Every animal does this. Human beings don't. So the idea is, okay, well, what happens to that stress, that anxiety, that activation? Where does that go? Oh, we hang on to that shit. It doesn't go anywhere because we're not getting rid of it. So how are we able to get rid of it? There are some times where I will recommend people do a somatic shake, whereas you're just standing up and literally just shaking your body around. Dance is amazing. Being able to be creative in some way, shape, or form. If that your chosen way of being creative is to draw. You're engaging, just that part of yourself where you can kind of just exercise that stuff. Sometimes it's progressive muscle relaxation. Sometimes it is, doing a 20-second hug for people who really are into like the physical touch, and that's like comforting for them. A 20-second hug is an amazing way to complete a stress cycle. But if we don't complete it, the idea is that it's going to live inside. And so how do we get that out? Peter Levine, who created somatic experiencing, tells us... I love
Peter Levine.
Oh my gosh. Have you heard his story about Nancy, the 24-year-old woman? It was how he kind of came up with somatic experiencing. She was 24, 25, I think, and had IBS and fibromyalgia, agoraphobia, just a laundry list of maladies, right? Came to him and said, I need help. I'll do anything. So she's laying on the couch in the office, and they're going through the consultation and everything. And her heart rate was at like 150 beats per minute. And so he told her, he'll even say this, like, it was the worst thing you could say to someone. But I said, Nancy, you really need to relax. I need you to relax right now. Yeah. And so her heart rate dropped, and then she went pale, and she said, I'm going to die. I'm going to die, doctor. I need you to help me. Please help me. I can't die. And so he said he had like this lucid dream of a tiger behind her. And he said, Nancy, I need you to run. There's a tiger behind you. Run now and climb this wall. You need to get out. You need to save yourself. And so over the course of the next 40 minutes, I wish I could see video of this. She went through like these muscle shakes and these muscle spasms where essentially she was lying down, but running. And she said, doctor, I saw myself. I saw the tiger, and I saw myself running, and I felt myself climbing this wall so that I could get away. And I looked down at the tiger, and it wasn't a tiger anymore. It was my 4-year-old self who was being held down, having an ether mask put on me so that they could do an appendectomy. And she said, I've held on to that for 20 years, that feeling of being restrained. And I held on to that for so long that my whole body was restraining me. Yeah. And so that's when he said, well, I decided I wasn't going to be a rocket scientist. I was going to create this approach for trauma. He's a rocket scientist of a different type, I suppose.
No, he's great.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful to see like the human organism is, we really are limiting it to so much.
We're capable of so much.
We really are. Yeah. And, my goal is to bring people's empowerment back. And because if you don't acknowledge how powerful you are, You're putting your beliefs into everything else outside yourself, but yourself. Why? You have this capability to overcome anything you want. And when people are faced with, the things your clients are going through, or the work that we do, and over 20 years, 30 years of a career of this work, you are so powerful. And I just want everyone to acknowledge themselves and to witness the power that they hold. We lose touch with that. And part of the work that I do as well is outside of my own work here and with the city of Los Angeles, I come home and I help people work through their own trauma by finding their own empowerment. And it's amazing to see when people actually see it and they feel it, wow, I am a fucking warrior.
Oh, there's nothing
I'm powerful
better.
Beyond all measure.
Yeah.
But we put these limitations on ourselves and these limiting belief systems that don't serve us anymore.
Yeah.
And your beliefs are powerful. And I love how you're bringing this work with your therapy into, that the very end, you bring in this belief system. What is it, something about yourself that you believe in, that you can cope with beyond this trauma? Because that's the cherry on top of it.
Oh, yeah.
When you can give someone this belief within themselves, hey, you know what? I am powerful. I can do this. Holy shit. I had this realization of myself. I believe in myself.
Yeah. Which I will tell you right now, put that directly in my veins. There is nothing better than hearing a story from one of my folks when they come back for the following week. And they'll tell me, I was put in this situation that would have just fucked me right up a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, whatever. And I actually got through it. And I did well. They're facing these things that were really scary for them and intimidating for them before. And they're saying, I was able to navigate that. And I felt like a sense of mastery over that. There's nothing better than that. I feel like I get tearful when I just think about it. It's such a great thing. Being able to witness that. What a fucking gift.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I like how you're saying this whole image about the dog, and the shaking it off. One of the techniques that I do is it's called shaking the tree, and you just shake. You jump up and shake for about 30 seconds to a minute.
Yep.
And it's releasing stagnant energy within the system. One of the things that I do, I know, because I have my own practices, I know myself where I've attuned to, and I know when I'm burnt out, when I feel like I'm feeling like shit when I come home from work. I get in the cold plunge. Luckily, I have one at my house.
Yeah.
And that somatic release after that shaking and shivering.
Just a reset, yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I've shook off 24 hours of whatever it was that was in my system. And I really feel this molecular change in myself. You have to find something that's going to help you with that and how to cope with these things. And with these drastic, things we go through with just, the regimen and just showing up to work from when you show up and when you come home, you could have gone on 2 calls and you're still within this regimen of the good soldier mentality, and you have to shift that. So find something. I encourage everyone to have some type of somatic work where you're changing the body and you're shaking out the things. Taking a shower is a huge thing. If you can do a cold shower, even better.
I was gonna say, I love a cold plunge. We have a cold plunge too.
Awesome.
I have fully drunk the Kool-Aid on that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Because you're just okay. If I can just get through these next couple of minutes, I just have to be able to breathe through this. Okay, it feels amazing. Once you're out, you're like, okay, I fucking did that. I was able to you're leaving whatever it was in the water.
Yeah, I mean, and over a period of time, your body becomes resilient, because there's been some misnomers, I guess, and ideas on cold plunging that it causes stress. I think that after doing it for such a long period of time, that my body now is able to go into that stress of being in the cold, and my body's accustomed to it, to where now my body doesn't react as much. So I'm going into a state of bliss when I'm in that state.
No, you're in this meditative kind of state where you're okay, I know what to anticipate here. And it's, kind of embracing the suck. Sort of. Yeah,
and you have to embrace it. Obviously, that's part of it. It learns to this art of letting go. Yeah,
I was gonna say, I feel like it's less of embracing the suck, more so I'm just letting go of. It's gonna be
And your body's always in a state of flux. I always change from hot to cold as well. I'm not always doing cold plunges, and that's kind of part of it too. Is you have to bring that awareness to your body is what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah. Try everything and see what sticks.
Yeah. Well, you have to, and bring that conscious shift,
yes,
right? To be attuned in what your body needs.
Yeah. And
if you have an impulse of something to do something, like for some reason you drive home, you pull into your driveway and you're like, I'm going to do a hot bath. Do it. Do those impulses. These are like things that are cued, that are showing you something for a reason. And for some reason we like put it off. Trust these impulses and these healthy impulses.
Healthy impulses. Yes. Thank you for making that distinction.
Because I am very impulsive in general, and I had to understand the balance between what's healthy impulse and then what's intuitive impulse. Because I trust, like if someone comes into my mind, my consciousness, there was a reason for that. And sometimes I'll call them and they'll say, dude, John, like, why did you call me right now? I was like, I was just going through some shit and I needed you to call me. And I was like, hey man, I'm just trusting my intuition, Yeah. So these are things, and this is from just doing my own practice with the art of listening to myself and being more attuned to myself and having balance with it. Because I used to be impulsive on a basis of toxicity.
Yes.
Drinking heavily. And then like,
show
just
me a
leading.
first responder and I'm going to show you someone who has impulse control issues.
Right. So,
and there's nothing wrong with that. Like this is, trust me, I'm married to one. Like, show me a firefighter, I will show you someone with impulse control problems. It's being able to like harness that and figure out, okay, well, is this going to be helpful to me? Is this not going to be helpful to me? I don't do a lot of the value judgment of like, is it good or bad or right or wrong? It's like, is it helpful? Like, look at your value system. Look at where you want to be in life. Is this helpful to you? Or is this going to not be as helpful to you? That's it more than anything.
And you're posing the idea of asking questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Always.
I love how you're doing that, because that is one of the important factors of the study of the self, is to ask yourself important questions, because if you don't ask questions, you're not going to get the answers. You know yourself in such a way to where you're going to receive an answer, and the answer usually is the right answer.
Oh yeah. And we're taught though too, and I think my work with women in particular is around, like, I have my first responder partners and I have some first responders who are women. It's always around, well, I've been taught to not listen to myself. I'm like, yeah, because if you do, you're hysterical, right? Or you're that emotional chick, right? We don't listen to ourselves. And I mean, just Western society in general, we're taught, here, take this pill. Don't listen to yourself. For sure. Just take this pill. Which is not to knock Western medicine. There's a time and place for it.
Oh, I like to knock it.
Time and place for everything. Well, I mean, sometimes you need it, right? There are times where, like my friend who was collapsed on the floor, she needed an appendectomy.
For sure.
Yeah. So like, that's cool. It's fine. But, 9 times out of 10, if you're just going to start listening to yourself, a lot of that discomfort, you have to feel it and then go through it, grow. And yeah, you probably won't need that medication. Or maybe you will. Who knows? But we don't judge it.
Don't judge it. No, that's
easier said than done.
That's for sure. Like, one of the main factors here is bringing that awareness to yourself. You have the answers. Yeah. You just need to know how to navigate it. And we're just not taught how to navigate it, unfortunately.
No, we're really just taught how to judge it.
Damn, that hurts.
It's true.
No, you're right. I get it.
Yeah, we're taught how to judge it.
I was just listening to these studies on these Western African cultures, and people have been going over there and studying the tribes, and like they don't know what anxiety and depression is.
No,
it's not. That concept is not in their idea of anything of what humanity equals or exists in.
Yeah,
and we've created this in our own world.
So I think to a degree.
Wild.
To a degree, yes, but I think we've also pathologized the shit out of it.
Totally.
That's a whole other conversation. Like,
For sure.
We've definitely pathologized it, because sometimes it's just a normal range of human emotions, right? Like, these things are all normal reactions, right? We're all going to experience anxiety. We're all going to experience depression. When we begin to pathologize it, I don't love that.
No, I'm with you on that.
But I don't love pathologizing in general. I think and the conversation we had earlier about the PTSD naming stuff.
Right.
that's been pathologized as well.
For sure.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time breaking that down as much as I possibly can with every single person I work with. Okay. I think there's a lot of discussion. I see it a ton. Just, is it PTSD? Is it PTSI? Is it PTS? I don't give a fuck what you call it. Hot take. I don't care. We're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic at that point.
For sure.
Doesn't fucking matter what you call it.
Yeah.
Because my treatment of you is not going to matter. The reason why we have PTSD as a formal diagnosis in the DSM-5, it came around in 1981 in the DSM. Before that, it was called shell shock and all this other crazy stuff. Fine. It exists in the DSM-5 because the DSM-5 is an insurance billing manual. It's the only reason why that name exists.
That makes sense.
Is so that if I work with an insurance company, so that I can bill them for what I'm doing with you. But it doesn't inform the way that I treat you. It does not change the way that I treat you. You can call it whatever you want. I will say PTSD one time in a session where I will say, you meet criteria for PTSD. If someone asks me, usually I don't even tell someone what their diagnosis is.
Right.
Because it's not germane to what I'm doing.
Right.
You know, but if they'll ask, like, I don't know, do I have PTSD? I'll say, I mean, you meet criteria for it. So what? Really, there's nothing else. You can call it whatever you want, you know, but if you don't have post-traumatic stress disorder, I think, you can't possibly experience post-traumatic growth. So we have to acknowledge that one has to exist for the other. That. And my goal is always to get you to post-traumatic growth. So, yeah, that naming convention is just a way of pathologizing it.
No, I love what you're saying.
I don't spend too much time on it.
You cannot stop labeling shit.
Yeah.
You know, you put a label on something and now you're creating a concept in your mind, and then now someone will begin to wrap and create a world around this concept.
Yeah.
Because I talked about it before. It becomes
an identity.
Right, for sure.
And I don't love that, because it's like you're a human being who's experiencing normal reactions
for sure
to abnormal circumstances. Who goes on the calls that you guys go on? Nobody gets to see that shit. Yeah. No one should, including you all. No one should ever see these things. No one should have to go on these calls where a 3-year-old was crushed by a crib. No one should have to go on these calls where 2 kids are ejected from a car. No one should go on these things. And you all have to show up every day and go through these things. So, yeah, having a diagnosis of PTSD, of course you do. Of course you meet the criteria for it. But it, again, does not change the way that I treat you. I'm going to treat you exactly the same way as, you know, if you didn't have those 4 letters in your head. It's irrelevant to me, really, what the diagnosis is.
Yeah, I mean, now it also is becoming a programming. Now we're attracted to, hey, what's wrong with me? I have something.
Yeah.
And you want some type of validation for whatever is happening to your system.
Which I respect. People want validation. They want to be seen and heard, for sure.
For sure. Yeah. You know, but if we, let's say if someone has a cancer diagnosis, you know, I've heard from many doctors, like, they don't like to tell people they have cancer because now it makes them more sick. And they go into a state of crisis within themselves at a mental place.
Yeah, they totally can.
That they usually don't recover as much unless, you know, they be able to get through it at a mental level, because then now they're prescribed a bunch of SSRIs with their cancer diagnosis. So we have to understand, like, this programming even with suicide, you know, even seeing like the suicide that's been out there with like first responders and veterans, you know, I think it's like 22 a day or something like that.
Sure,
but this is a programming now. Now people see it on their phones, they see it on the computers, they see it on the news. It's this thing that's at a subconscious place where we're receiving this information. And now that thought comes back into our minds now, because there's something at a subconscious level subliminally that's being entered into our minds.
Yeah.
We have to be careful with what we allow into our systems, into the matrix of who we are.
Yeah.
Because this is a point that's really gratifying to that empowerment of yourself, of choosing what you allow
curating
into
what you consume.
your eyes, what you see, and what you're consuming. It's one of the biggest practices that I'm involved in with my own. I have a diet with what I allow into my consciousness and what I don't.
I love that.
Because I know how malleable my mind is at a subconscious level.
Yeah.
And I'm careful with that. And I really want to instill that into anyone who's listening to this, to understand like that's valid. And your children too. Think about that. Your children are receiving so much subconscious things from what they see, and they're even more malleable. We talked about earlier, like how we're being taught to learn outside of ourselves. And that as a child, all the programmings and things I've seen on TV and those things up until I was 12 years old, I kind of lost sight on myself. I never was taught how to study myself.
No.
So there was a lot of judgment for myself. I had to look at that and see the programmings that I had from guilt, sin, and the finger of religion that was pointed at me since I was a child. I had to relook at that.
Don't even get me started.
And so these things I had to face and re-unravel, and to now give myself an identification of who I am, to bring forth this version of who I am now that is being able to see the truth. And what do they say? The truth shall set you free. Mm-hmm. And I really feel liberated by taking the effort of looking at all the crevices and the cracks of my consciousness. Was it easy? Hell no.
No. Is it scary? Absolutely.
It was scary at first, but after
intimidating. After
a while, I was like, oh, UPS is here? Damn, man.
UPS.
So, by being able to look at myself, I began to see I was looking at an empty mirror. And through that empty mirror was nothingness. And being comfortable in that void space was one of the most, it was a place of enlightenment I was able to see within myself. Mm-hmm. And all the doctrines, all the programmings, all of the negative belief systems I carried and the limitations that I held for myself was released. Just by having the courage to step forth within, just being able to be willing to look at myself. And now I could look at myself in the mirror and like give myself a wink and be like, yo, I like you. Mm-hmm. You're a cool dude, man. But I remember talking to Dr. Heather Williams, who was on here, and she was telling a story about a man who couldn't look at himself in the mirror. Yeah. And when he did, he cried because he didn't like what he saw. And I can relate to that. I remember looking at myself in the mirror and I was like, dude, you're an asshole. You treat people like shit. And you don't have respect for yourself. And I remember thinking that in my mind one time. And I was like, there has to be a change here. And I was honest with myself at that point. And I think that greater honesty created greater evolution for myself, which wasn't easy. It required a lot of habits that needed to be changed,
Sure.
But when all was said and done, after this period of time, I am happy that I can be happy, you know what I mean? And be joyful, but also know that I can sit in my sadness when I need to grieve it. You know what I mean? This part too, like, it's not always,
it's not going to undo you. It's not going to take you down. It's going
to be okay.
And it's also understanding that kind of growth is not linear.
Yes.
It's always something I like to point out. It is not linear.
Right.
If it was, God, wouldn't that be great? But it's not. It's all over the place. We're going to slide back. We're going to, we're going to have moments like that. A lot of that is don't judge it. How can we practice instant self-forgiveness, instant self-compassion? How would you approach this if you were, I tend to I think in pictures a lot. And when I see my clients, I see them as children. I don't know why. It's just kind of something that shows up in my brain. So it's like, okay, well, how would you handle this if your 5-year-old self did this? If you're a parent, it's even better. It's like, how would you, if your kid made a slip up on something, if they screwed something up, if they made a mistake, what do? Do you step in and instantly judge it and shit all over them? Mm. No, you don't. You grab them, you hold them close and you say, it's okay. We're going to figure it out together. I want the same for you when it's just you. It's being able to not judge it. Come in with compassion the same way you would as if it was your own child.
That's really beautiful. But, you're a mother.
I am. I've got a couple. Yeah.
Okay, so this feminine energy is not instilled in balance with the masculine.
No, and I could go on a whole rant about the traditional masculine ideology and how it's really just not serving men. that's a whole other podcast. We could do that again. But
no, it's a balance, right? It's a balance of these energies.
It's being able to understand, like, you don't always have to be achieving. You don't have to have, all masculine traits. You can show some emotion. It's okay to take a pause. It's okay to, not fall into this traditional masculine ideology. There has to be that balance. There has to be, because if we're all one thing, we're going to think about it in terms of a scale. If you're all on one side, you're all the way down here. What are you missing up here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to spit out some esoteric knowledge here and ancient teachings of our makeup and blueprint of who we are as humans. Mm-hmm. Now, there's this concept of kundalini, if anyone's ever heard that term. And through ancient studies, through ancient Eastern Hinduism and ancient Tibetanism, there's this frequency within us. It is called the kundalini, and it starts at the base of the spine. And it is two energies, and it's two snakes. One is a feminine energy, and one is a masculine of energy. And those that find mastery within their life are able to integrate these two energies and bring it into balance. So those who are able to find this state of being with bringing in the two forms of these greater energies of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And the divine feminine is these traits of receptivity, creativity, nourishment, compassion. These things are not necessarily, if you're looking at it from a male perspective, these things provide for you a service in finding balance within yourself. It's not necessarily like you're a woman, but it's bringing in these traits that provide emotional intelligence for oneself, because the masculine is more of a logical sense, a protector. A being of steadfast logic, someone you can trust and you want to rely on is that person. Merging these two energies is what they call, at the very tip of it, is enlightenment. And enlightenment is what we see as being in a state of bliss, in a state of non-judgment, in a state of oneness. And so these teachings have been instilled into the masters of the human spirit of who we are. Now, I hope this doesn't deter or keep people from listening to this podcast, but it is essential. Yeah, it is. These ancient practices of understanding, this quality that is within us. And, even going into understanding it for myself, like giving myself nourishment, that was important for me. And I understood how to change my diet through that. And being able to integrate these qualities it's all about, it's a balancing act. And you have to understand it's all about that. And so if your body's crying out to you, it just means that something's out of balance. We talked about labels. You don't have to put a label on something or a pathology about something. No. It just means you're out of balance and a symptom is coming up to the surface to show you something. And it's speaking to you. So just listen to it and just understand how the complexity is revealing itself through repressed emotion, through repressed stagnant energy, through lack of sleep, poor diet. Oh. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about too, is most of the serotonin that is derived, it comes from the gut. And part of the somatic things that we're talking about here, a lot of the gut issues is something that's not being taught here and being instilled in what is happening to our system at a biological level, because our state of stress, that amygdala that we were talking about, when it's on fire, now all your cortisol is being raised to the roof. Oh, your dopamine receptors are all, everything's firing off at an imbalanced state. So we have to come back to homeostasis to find neutrality in a balanced state. And that's where we're at right now, is trying to figure out how can we get to that point. So a big portion of that factor is your gut health and understanding the quality of that. And I understand from the term PTS, going into these labels, right? Sure. But you have this cortisol that's being produced in the brain. Your amygdala is on fire. Now your gut responds to it because it's creating serotonin. Now it starts depleting it. And now your body is going to start creating candida overgrowth in the body. Yep. And so a lot of these things, you know, and if you adding bad
As I say,
diet
you're
to
throwing
it,
in bad diet, you're throwing in alcohol overconsumption,
refined sugars,
yes,
you know, complex carbohydrates that are you know, through usually gluten, because let's just face it, like our crops and our soil has been poisoned by glyphosates, and all the gluten has been poisoned. If you go to Europe and you eat pasta over there, you're not going to gain 10 pounds in a week. You're going to be skinny and thin.
Yeah.
People over there drink wine and eat gluten all the time. It's not a big deal. Over here, you gain 30 pounds by like 2.5, 3 weeks. So like some of these things are really important. Parasites are one of the biggest things too. And everyone has parasites because of what we deal with. So you have to really understand like what's happening to our body biologically through just the gut biome itself. You know, if you go to Walgreens and just buy some probiotic gummies, that's not going to cut it.
Probably not going to do the job.
You got to start eating.
I mean,
things
you know
that
what?
are
It's
not
a
processed.
start, and I'm not going to knock someone for that.
Right.
Cool. It's a start. Probably not going to be enough.
It's
But
deeper
start somewhere.
than that,
You
for
have
sure.
to start somewhere.
Yeah. So luckily, you know, I'm working, you know, I've talked about bringing the community together and tackling this crisis we're dealing with as a whole. And I'm meeting so many radical people who understand the complexity of all this stuff. And one of them is a doctor who studies candida and the gut health and
interesting.
how much it's changing. Depression and anxiety. He says he puts people on these antifungals to get rid of candida, and they don't have anxiety and depression anymore.
Wild.
And so he's really a fascinating human being on how he studies just how important the gut is and how essential it is. And going into what I've talked about before, how your amygdala is on fire, cortisol is raised up. Now the center of your brain, the pineal gland, is this Wi-Fi system to your entire body that's regulating your hormones. And so one of the main issues right now is low testosterone levels for men in the fire department.
Yeah.
What that's causing is low libido, okay? Low energy levels. And then you have this state of like brain fog, okay? And then let's say you have low libido and you're with your partner or you want to engage in sexual activity. Now you create shame for yourself because you cannot perform.
Yeah, there's that vulnerability piece. Yeah.
So these are factors that are all creating this snowball effect within men that are creating shame. And shame is one of the worst emotions you can ever endure because that creates a state of just, you know, I'm not good enough. You start creating these belief systems now.
Judgment. Yeah.
Damn.
A lot of judgment.
So this shit is very complex, you know, and we have to look at this thing at a biological level as well because it's real. And if you are a firefighter, you better become this chemist that's figuring shit out because
or at least seek out some of these. There are some amazing functional medicine doctors who are out there.
I can't find any.
Oh man, there's some out there who are just preaching the gospel when it comes to these things. It's pretty impressive.
I know this doctor who he was a nutrition or a naturopath doctor, and he was treating people and curing them through a naturopath route. And he was like in his like late 70s, and everyone in his office were like in their 90s, like walking around. And the FDA started attacking him, wanted to throw him in jail for negligence.
Interesting.
Because of his ability to go up beyond outside of Western medicine to help people get better, you know, without this path of using medication and pharmacology.
Well, yeah,
which I found to be really
they don't make their money.
They ain't getting paid.
They ain't making their money.
I was like, damn, when I found out about this, I was like, okay, I can't be into conspiracies, but I'm into the truth, you know, and like, and understanding like there's some serious shit going down that's trying to make us sick. And so we, the people, have to understand that we are our own methods of healing.
At the very least, it's not, I don't know if it's trying to make us sick so much. I can't say for sure because I don't know. But at the very least, it's not helping us get better.
I mean, luckily, I've come across terrible doctors in my ways of trying to find myself to get back to neutrality and health, right?
Yeah.
And I've been able to find out like how bad the healthcare system is through workers' comp, which is a huge fucking issue.
Yeah.
Through my own personal doctors that are in my network within my insurance because I don't want to pay $150 for a doctor's visit.
Sure.
And, you know, just to even get blood work done. Doctors don't want to have you get blood work done too because now the insurance doesn't cover it. You got to pay out of pocket just to get your blood work done to check your hormone levels.
Yeah.
there's a system here that's just like, it's not equipped to help you out. So you have to pay out of pocket. You have to really put a lot of effort and money into finding health for yourself. And it's really sad.
And it's time consuming as hell to advocate for yourself.
For sure.
It's really time consuming. Like for my world of it, like the EAP side of it is, yeah, that's a whole other conversation where these are the resources that are available or made available. And really, are they the appropriate resources for, especially for first responder community? Our EAP resources, not knocking them. They're amazing trained individuals who are, they're great at their job, but would they be better placed working with, a banker as opposed to a firefighter, or an accountant versus a police officer? Yeah, probably. Because that cultural competency piece is really missing. That's another struggle. There are some amazing groups who are out there trying to change that. Like Overwatch Collective shirt I'm wearing right now. They exist basically solely to keep people from having to go through workers' comp and EAP. They're all about confidentiality. They're all about culturally competent therapists. It's run by an active duty law enforcement officer who is a Marine vet, who is active duty in the Coast Guard Reserve, and an aspiring firefighter. And it's all kind of like first responder military run. But they will help pay for therapy costs with one of their
I love that.
Contracted therapists. Yeah, so I'm one of their contracted therapists. They have some
wonderful,
phenomenal clinicians there.
So I'm really happy you brought that term, cultural competency.
It's so important.
Because, I've even explained to this when I have a rookie that's coming into my station. The first thing I say to them is like, okay, here's the deal. You're stepping into a culture that you know nothing about. Especially in each individual department, there's a specific culture. It's like you're an anthropologist driving into a third world country, and now you're driving into next to a river inside the rainforest, and you're trying to study a tribe. Okay? There's certain ways and initiations in which they're not even going to tell you anything unless you are understanding what's a part of their culture, who they are, their dialect. This is a very important way to study what's going on here. And so let's try to put a therapist into helping someone who's in this culture that they have known nothing about, and they're trying to help them, but they have no idea of what's going on at this level. And that's a super valuable thing to understand when you're treating a firefighter, a police officer. Because, even for me, I have a hard time relating to police officers because as much as we're in this type of service, it's still fucking different.
It's very different. Yeah.
One of my mentors, he's a detective who is in, his work is into sex crimes.
Okay.
He's in a whole field that I'm in awe about. Well, the shit he tells me, I'm like, dude, and how do you cope with this stuff, man? And he says he loves it, but I'm like, really? Do you love it? It's crazy the things he sees and deals with.
You have to find, yes, you have to love it. You have to love it if you're going to do it and it's not going to take you down. You have to love it. There has to be an aspect of it that you love. You don't have to love the shit you're seeing, obviously, especially with sex crimes. Are you kidding? Come on. Yeah. But you have to love, there's passion there. It's same as this. I don't love the stuff that my people go through. It's awful. Their stories are, the things that they go through. Gosh, every person who comes through my door, I tell them immediately, if you're on my computer screen or you come through my door, you are loved and held and cared for. There's no way around this. You're stuck with me. Sorry. Because this is my family. My father was a Navy vet. My brother was an Air Force vet. My uncle was a Marine Corps vet. All three of them died by suicide. My first husband was a firefighter. He was a hot shot and then went to a municipal department. My husband now is a firefighter. There's no way around this. This is my family. This is who I want to take care of. I think because I have lived experience with it, that's part of the reason why I only ever wanted to work with this community. All through graduate school, they ask you okay, well, who do you want to work with? What's your chosen population? It was always first responders for me. Not very many people knew that going in, which community they wanted to work with. But yeah, it was only ever going to be that group. And you have to love it. it's tough if you have someone who is an EAP therapist, who the stories I hear from some of my clients, they're like, yeah, I talked to someone at EAP and I think I fucking traumatized him. And I'm like, yeah, you probably did. You probably did.
Yeah.
And I mean, is this to say that it's not heavy? I'm a true empath. Like, I carry this shit with me. That's why I have a therapist and I see him weekly. He's a phenomenal human being and helps me process this stuff so that I can call my energy back in, so that I can continue to show up for my people. And I tell my clients, if you are crying, if you are really going through it, I'm probably going to tear up right along with you. I'm not going to lose my shit because it's not my therapy. But yeah, I'm going to tear up with you because I'm here. Like, I'm present with you. You can tell me anything. Like, I have seen, heard, or done pretty much everything. I'm 46 years old. I've lived a whole ass life. Tell me anything. It's totally fine. I can hold it and not get taken down by it. It's okay. But not every therapist can do that. Not with this community anyway. So having that cultural competency piece is so crucial.
Oh, it's really admirable, from you. And like, I personally know that like a lot of guys, I could say guys, but men and women, in my field of work, they say therapy doesn't work, and, but to know someone like you, I know that therapy is helpful. And as far as being devil's advocate on that end, but you are coming from a place of having that cultural competency and have a heart for this work. But you're very rare to find, especially within this network of people you're choosing from, right? It's just, you're definitely one in a million as far as a therapist goes.
I think it's hard to find that fit.
Yeah.
It's hard to find. I mean, even for me, it was hard for me to find my own therapist who was going to be capable of holding the shit that I was going to be bringing to them. And I mean, we're not talking about the stuff that I go through at work. We're talking about just my regular life too, because I'm a fire wife. I've got a couple of kids and a full-time practice. Like I got shit going on. And then all the stuff that comes along with that, some things happens with one of my kids this week that I had to process in therapy yesterday. Like, it's hard to find someone who can carry that kind of stuff. So for the folks who say therapy doesn't work, maybe it was just that therapist you talked with. Maybe it wasn't a good fit. Maybe you weren't ready, because you really do have to gauge someone's readiness. Like, it's constantly what I'm doing. Like, how ready are you to talk about this? How ready are you to dive into this thing that you're bringing up? And if you're not ready, that's cool. All of my folks are always in the driver's seat. I'm okay if you want to pump the brakes on that, if you want to pause and talk about something else for a little bit. But know that I've already made a mental note. We're going to come back to it. But yeah, I don't know. There's a joke about therapists. It says, how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Just one, but that light bulb has to want to change. So it works if you're ready for it to work, and if you find the right fit. And I tell people, and I do a 15-minute consultation before I ever book with someone, because there should be that discovery. I should get to learn about them. They should get to learn about me. I'm a no bullshit therapist. I've told clients, should I tell you you're full of shit in this session, or should I wait until next week? Because either way, you're going to get it, because you're totally full of shit right now. Like, I don't buy anything you're telling me.
Nice.
They stayed with me for a year.
No, you need that. And I think people...
this community in particular, too. Because, I'm very cognizant of the fact that, like, just on this planet, we only have so much time. I'm not about to waste any of it. I don't want to waste yours either. And, like, therapy isn't cheap. So I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste your money. I'm going to tell you if I see a problem with something. I'm going to tell you if I think something is an issue.
No, you mean you're bringing up the best way to go about things, which is going straight through it.
You have
to. There's no other way to bullshit around it. I mean, this shirt says, as I'm calling bullshit.
Yeah, I love that one. I read that when I came in. It's great.
Because we create these like ideas of this masks we wear and this outer persona that's not real.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that really creates turmoil, is this illusion that we are creating for ourselves. And that's a form of disassociation, that we're unwilling to see the truth which is another way of denial. And you don't want to live in a state of denial because you want to walk in your truth. And if you're in this place within yourself to believe in who you are, you have to really be fully honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And your behaviors, and the way you think. You can change it all in a second. It doesn't have to be that way. But we also have this pattern within our place in Western culture that want to create pain for ourselves too.
Oh, it's the resistance to the pain that causes the suffering.
And an addiction to it. For some reason, there's an addiction to want this masochism, of just like punishing yourself. And firefighters have this mentality of wanting to punish ourselves too. I remember this woman was helping me through some serious trauma that I was dealing with my mother. And she was helping me walk through it. And she realized I had a pattern of punishing myself because I had this pattern of thinking I was a bad boy my entire life.
Yeah.
And I had to look at that, and I was like, whoa, like that was what was holding me back to even process the grief that I carried with my mom.
Yeah.
Is that I believed that I was a bad boy.
Yeah. That core belief, that negative belief you have about yourself.
Yeah. And then I was walking myself through, like, I created an identity from me thinking I was a bad boy to 100%. Being an anarchist punk rock skater kid my entire life. And I had to realize, like, there was something deeply rooted that was way beyond my means of seeing something but this woman unraveled it quickly for me. And I was like, whoa, like, what did you do to me? And she looked at me, she was like, you punish yourself. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And your body doesn't like it. And your little self, that little boy inside you, does not like it either. And I was like, damn, she really got me to the core with that one.
And that's, you have to, I don't know, for me, I have to be no bullshit. I'm here to get shit done. Like, that's just it. I have my sticker on my water bottle, the get shit done
club. Get shit done.
Because I'm here to get shit done.
Yeah.
I mean, like, could I sit here and let you go through the pity party for weeks on end? Yeah, I could. I could collect a paycheck on that. Sure, why not? It's not ethical, and B, it's just not my style. I don't know. I worked 18 years in tech before I got into this. So I've done the navel gazing around that stuff. It's bullshit. I don't want to do it anymore. Like, I needed to get into this field so that I could feel better about what I was doing with my life every day.
So we need people like you right now, because what is happening within this field, within our fire departments, we're in a state of fucking crisis. And we have to get shit done right now. There is no way to tiptoe around this. It has to be head on. And this is what we're seriously dealing with, some shit. And like, I don't give a fuck what's happening. If you get in my way, get out of my way, because this has to be revealed to people of how many people are hurting and are not getting the proper help. And people are just dealing with it, and suicides are happening way more than they need to.
Yeah.
I don't want any more folded flags coming to where I have to face and see this shit anymore. It's too much suffering.
Yeah.
And we are the people who show up at your house to help you.
Why
are we the ones that are dying off?
Yeah.
So I really admire you and your work so much, and everything you're doing. Like, it speaks a volume to me, and I know, like, you just relate so much. And to be a fire wife, that is fucking hard to do. You know what I mean? It's seriously difficult.
It's not easy.
If you're chosen to do that, it's like, it's a big deal, And I always give women respect who are at home, being a spouse and in relation to support their husbands, because it's really hard to take someone home and transition that and understand the complexity of what's going on with them, and bringing that home life and bringing, like, balance in the house and safety and, like, raising kids. It's a lot. So it really takes a strong, powerful woman to do that. And like I said, I really admire you, and I respect you for all the work you do.
Thanks. It's not easy. And I mean, and none of this is to say that, like, because I'm a therapist, I'm nailing it 100% of the time. No. I signed up to be a human before I signed up to be a clinician.
For sure.
I fuck up too. It's okay.
Very humble of you to say.
It's true. I make mistakes. And I tell my people, like, I make mistakes too. It's all right. We all make mistakes. But see how I'm here owning it?
Yeah.
Your turn.
No, like transparency is really huge. And, pompism is like a state of egocentric nature that doesn't serve anyone.
Yeah.
And I know that it never served me because I witnessed the fall of myself through it, and it didn't serve me. So like to go in a state of humility through the own shattering of my own fragmented self and to pick up the pieces was the hardest thing I had. I'm still doing it, it's still work.
Yeah.
But that brings me into a state of being relatable to people and to just help see the truth of it all. Which is the humanitarian aspect of it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
It's a hard word.
The humanitarian.
It's a tough word. No, I had someone come in when I was at the residential treatment facility, and she was like, I'm a businesswoman. I work for a Fortune 50. I do all of these things. And she was telling me all of these, like, I won this award and that award and all these things. Very real for her. And that's great. And I said, and yet you're here. Cool story, bro. You want to sit down? Let's talk about it. It's like, yeah. It's like, that's okay. Your ego is totally fine, but it's not going to fit through the door. I need like the actual human side of you is here. And yet you have, you drink yourself to sleep every single night. You're sick every single night. You've lost 2 marriages. Your kids don't talk to you anymore. I'm glad you have all those awards, but now what? Because you're still sitting in my office. So
that's real.
I think that's probably where I was already a no bullshit person, but I think I developed a lot of that no bullshit around substance use because you can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we have these people, these godheads per se in our line of work that are seen as like these, legends.
Sure.
And you look at their home life and it's in fucking turmoil.
Shambles. Yeah.
And destruction. And I saw through that immediately when I got on this job and I saw this line of work. I was like, I don't want that. I was like, I don't want that shit, man. Like, I don't care who people see me at work, but I cannot have my home life become that.
Yeah.
And I just remember like when I was in training, like at the academy, like when I got hired, like this captain was telling me about like this story, it was a really, graphic story. He was telling us about like, he was like patting himself on the back of this badge of honor he had from like this traumatic call he had. He's like, you know what I did with that? He's like, finished a Jack Daniels bottle. And I thought
story, bro.
I thought to myself, I was like, this guy's a fucking idiot, man.
Yeah.
Like he's teaching us, all these people who are about to get it on this job,
that this is how you handle things.
This is okay.
Yeah.
This guy is a fool and he's not a leader. And yet he wears this badge that is in a state of leadership.
Yeah.
These are the things that I questioned, and throughout my career and seen, and really, and understanding what the truth is behind leadership, really, which is a big deal. You don't have to have a badge, and a position to be in that state of leadership.
No, you could be a 30-year firefighter and be a leader. You don't have to be a BC, DC, fucking captain. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. My husband, we joke about it. He's getting a lot of pressure right now. He's been on for 10 years. He's getting a lot of pressure to promote. And they're like, oh, come on, we're testing for captain in 2025. Start taking your classes. Would he be an amazing captain? Yes. They would be lucky to have him as a captain. He is a coach, trainer, developer. It's in his DNA. It's who he is. And we talked about it. And I said, so are you serious about taking these classes? We have to figure out where they are, how to like logistics and all of that stuff. And he said, no. I was like, I'm not chasing a title. I said, okay. He was like, yeah, my kids call me dad. That's enough. I'm like, okay. I love that. Like there's no ego. Yeah. There's no ego.
Yeah, I know I had one of my classmates when I first got hired, and like,
sorry, this is like a brag about my husband.
No, it's that's
he's
for him to say that.
rad.
It's beautiful. Like to say, like, you know what, my kids call me dad. That's more than enough for me.
Yeah, my kids call me dad. That's good.
That's more valuable to me because I put more value in my family and my health than I do as my label as a firefighter.
Yeah.
And I just going back to this story, like with one of my classmates, his dad, he's like a second generation firefighter, and his dad, he had no relation with him his entire life.
Yeah.
And a couple of us were just talking. He's like, hey, who's gonna pin the badge on you when you graduate? And he was like, my mom. And he's like, well, what happened to your dad? Doesn't he work for the job? He's like, no, I hate my dad.
Yeah.
And that, when he said that, like, all of us kind of looked at each other, like, and he was serious. All of us looked at each other with like this, just like, dude, like, that's gnarly. Like, I never want that.
Yeah. You have
for
a choice.
my children, you know?
You have a choice to allow that to be, and because it's hard, we ask a lot of our kids.
Yeah.
As you know, I've told my husband and I talked about it a lot. Like, I ask a lot of my children. Like, they have to understand what happens. I had to explain to my 5-year-old the other night. My husband just finished a 96. My son is 5 and went through some stuff at school this week with a bully at school. And he was going to bed the other night and he said, Mom, can you call Daddy and have him come home while I'm asleep? And I said, no, babe, we FaceTimed with Dad at dinner, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, you saw his rookie that he's got on there right now, because he's got a junior guy at his station right now. And he said, yeah, I was talking with him. And I said, well, Daddy has to stay there because he's a new firefighter. This other guy's a new firefighter. Daddy has to teach him how to be a firefighter like Daddy is. And he got that, but I'm like, man, I'm asking a 5-year-old to be okay with the fact that his dad's not going to be home for 4 days straight. Like that, it's so hard what we ask of our kids in this lifestyle. I mean, as an adult, as a partner, it's a little different for me. Did I sign up for this? No, I didn't sign up for that. So I always push back when people say, well, you signed up for this. But yeah, we ask a lot of our kids to be part of this. Like, they just happened into this world, right? So yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
that's hard. And it's sad that he had that relationship with his dad, because it can really go one of two ways.
Totally.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of effort. I mean, yesterday we had, Paisley is my girlfriend's daughter, and like she had something going on at school, and like, you know, I had so much to do yesterday, and I was like really tired, and my girlfriend asked if I wanted to go, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go because I want to show up for her. It means so much to her.
Yeah.
You know, and I made a decision. I could have stayed home and chilled out, you know, instead of meeting up with them and hanging out with them. But I know how much that meant to her.
Yeah.
And it took more effort of me to do that because of what it meant to her. And I know that for a fact, because I know when I was a kid, those small things meant so much to me.
Yeah.
You know, like those little things when my mom didn't make it to like my wrestling match or my soccer match, like, it meant a lot to me, you know, and like I remember those times when she didn't show up, you know?
Yep.
So like showing up for your kids is huge. And showing up for yourself is most important. That's one of the biggest things we're talking about here, is like show up for yourself and balance that out. Because if you are not showing up for yourself, how can you show up for your family? How can you show up for your loved ones?
Yeah. How
can you be a better firefighter if you're not showing up for yourself and recovering when you're at home?
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the biggest factors here. And, you know, burning candles at both ends, it's not going to last very long. It ends up being really, really fucked up. And guys know, like, when they did do that and they have a choice to make,
sure, and
they made the right choice, they know they're not going to go back to that old self, because it ends up being just super tiring. You start sleeping terrible. It turns into so much more.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to wrap up here.
Okay.
If you're cool with that.
Sure.
But thank you so much. If there's anything else, like how people can reach you or anything like that, do you have any info?
Yeah. People can reach me. You can email me at mindmatterswithmaggie@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram also with mindmatterswithmaggie. And yeah, that's probably two of the best ways to get a hold of me. Those are two of the more direct ways. I'm on Psychology Today and all the things. So if you Google me, I'm sure it shows up. If you just Google Maggie Hernandez AMFT, I think I'm the first result.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Maggie.
Thank you so much, John. This
honor
is great.
to have you here.
Yeah, it's great
really
to be
speak to you and get to know you. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
it's really
absolutely.
beautiful to have you here in this episode. So just to close up here, thank everyone for listening, and go on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, give us some stars, some ratings, 5 stars if you want. And just to integrate our sponsor and team member, Frontline Behavioral Wellness, if you can reach out to them and they want to help first responders and see a change in how we treat first responders, so you can access their hotline 661-877-7241. It's a 24/7 confidential hotline. If you are in crisis, if you just need a little help, this hotline is directed towards getting you the help you need right away. And they have a team of clinicians that are there to help you and get you what you need, whether it's from sobriety, whether it's in a state of PTSD, these labels, right? They're willing to help and get you the help you need that's covered by insurance. And they make sure that the cost is not the main priority, that you're getting the help you need first, which is super important. And people are worried about that when they need help in a crisis state. So thank you everybody for listening, and take care.